Marcus Ellison stood in the center of the company lobby dripping wet while his wife's family laughed and mocked him without shame. What none of them knew was that the money saving their collapsing family empire, the $600 million holding the company together, belonged to the quiet man they had just humiliated in public, and the truth was already climbing the floors of the building. Marcus Ellison learned how to stay calm long before the world ever tried to test him like this. Years of building power quietly had taught him that reactions were expensive and silence was priceless. That morning he woke up earlier than usual, not because he was nervous but because he was precise about timing. He dressed in a simple charcoal suit that fit perfectly without drawing attention and adjusted his cufflinks slowly while watching the city wake up outside the window. The money had already moved before sunrise. $600 million transferred through layers of legal structure and holding companies that had taken years to design. Every signature was already in place. Every clause already locked. Marcus knew that by noon the company his wife's family had run for generations would no longer belong to them. Claire, his wife, stood in front of the mirror applying makeup with sharp, efficient movements. She looked confident, relieved, and almost joyful because she believed this day marked her victory. To her, the anonymous investor was a miracle that saved her family name and proved her importance inside the company. To Marcus, the deal was something else entirely. It was a mirror. They drove together in silence toward Halecrest Industries headquarters. Claire scrolled through messages from her mother and sister, smiling as praise poured in. Marcus watched the city pass by, feeling nothing but clarity. He had given Claire chances to see him. He had waited for respect to grow. But contempt had grown instead. When they arrived at the glass building, reporters were already gathering near the entrance. Banners celebrating a new partnership hung across the lobby. Employees whispered excitedly and fearfully because everyone knew the company had been on the edge of collapse. Marcus stepped out of the car first and opened Claire's door out of habit, not submission. She accepted it without acknowledgement because to her this was expected. Inside the lobby the air buzzed with tension disguised as celebration. Executives smiled too wide. Assistants rushed back and forth pretending everything was under control. Marcus walked beside Claire but already felt invisible. Claire's mother spotted them immediately and her face tightened when she saw Marcus. She leaned toward her daughter and whispered something that made Claire sigh. They approached the center of the lobby where cameras waited and conversations paused. Claire introduced Marcus loudly and casually as her driver, who insisted on walking her inside for safety. Laughter followed quickly, smooth, rehearsed, and cruel. Marcus felt eyes slide over him like he was furniture. He nodded politely because dignity was something he carried internally. Her sister stepped forward holding a bottle of water meant for the press. She laughed and joked about tipping the driver. Before anyone could intervene, she tilted the bottle and poured it directly onto Marcus's chest and face. Cold water soaked through his suit. Gasps mixed with laughter. Phones rose higher. Security froze, unsure whether to act. Marcus stood still. Water dripped onto marble. His breathing stayed even. He met Claire's eyes and saw no regret. She smiled. That smile told him everything he needed to know. What they did not see was the legal team upstairs already finalizing documents with his name printed clearly. What they did not know was that Marcus Ellison did not invest for profit alone. He invested for truth. As laughter echoed through the lobby, the elevator doors upstairs opened quietly. The chairman's office lights turned on. And the company began changing hands without ceremony. Marcus wiped water from his face slowly. He straightened his jacket and waited. Marcus Ellison remained standing in the lobby long after the laughter faded into uncomfortable whispers. He did not rush to wipe his suit or raise his voice because moments like this demanded control, not spectacle. The cold water clung to his skin as a reminder not of humiliation but of clarity. Every drop reminded him of how carefully he had built his life and how recklessly others had tried to define it. Claire's family shifted positions as the cameras kept rolling. Some smiled nervously while others pretended the moment had already passed. Her mother adjusted her pearls again and whispered that the press loved drama. Her father cleared his throat and motioned for security to move Marcus away from the center of the lobby. Two guards approached with uncertain steps because they did not know whether to remove him or protect him. Marcus looked at them calmly and nodded reassuringly. He thanked them quietly and said he would step aside on his own. That kindness confused them more than anger ever could. Claire stood near the reception desk speaking animatedly to a reporter. She described the anonymous investor as a visionary partner who believed in her leadership. She spoke about growth, innovation and loyalty without once looking back at her husband. Marcus listened carefully because lies always revealed more than truth when spoken publicly. He moved toward a quieter corner of the lobby where a marble bench overlooked the elevators. Employees nearby whispered his name incorrectly or not at all. Some recognized him from internal emails as a consultant, others assumed he was nothing more than a personal driver. Marcus accepted their assumptions because anonymity had always been his strongest armor. Inside, his phone messages began arriving from upstairs. The legal team confirmed the final signatures were complete. The escrow had closed. The controlling shares had transferred. Hailcrest Industries now belonged to Ellison Holdings in full. Marcus read the message once, then locked the phone. There was no smile. No celebration. Only resolve. Upstairs, the boardroom filled with tension as executives gathered for what they believed would be a ceremonial announcement. Claire's father stood at the head of the table rehearsing gratitude toward a man he had never bothered to meet. He praised loyalty, family and legacy while unknowingly standing on borrowed ground. Several board members exchanged uneasy looks because the contract language had been unusually strict. The general counsel entered the room with a sealed folder and cleared her throat. She announced that the investor would join them shortly. Confusion rippled through the room because no one expected a physical presence. They had assumed the investor preferred shadows like so many powerful people did. Back in the lobby, Marcus rose from the bench as the elevator chimed. Employees stepped aside instinctively. Not because they recognized him but because something about his posture had changed. The calm was no longer passive. It was deliberate. Claire noticed him moving and frowned. She excused herself from the reporter and approached him with irritation sharp behind her smile. She whispered that he was embarrassing her and that he should wait in the car. Marcus met her gaze steadily and said nothing. Silence unsettled her more than words ever had. The elevator doors opened and a senior executive stepped out, scanning the lobby anxiously. His eyes landed on Marcus and widened. He adjusted his tie quickly and approached with visible relief. He greeted Marcus by name loudly and respectfully. The lobby froze. Phones lowered. Whispers died. Claire's smile cracked. The executive apologized for the delay and said the board was ready for him. Marcus thanked him calmly and asked for a moment. He turned toward Claire and her family, who now stared at him with confusion replacing arrogance. Marcus spoke softly but clearly so every microphone still recording could hear. He said he would join the board shortly. He said there were matters to address publicly first. Claire tried to laugh it off and asked what game he was playing. Her mother scoffed and muttered about disrespect. Her father stepped forward demanding answers. Marcus looked at them one by one and said nothing yet. He walked past them toward the elevator. Every step echoed. Inside the elevator alone, Marcus allowed himself one slow breath. Not relief. Not anger. Just focus. Upstairs, the boardroom doors opened as he approached. Conversation stopped. Chairs scraped quietly as people stood. The general counsel introduced him formally as the majority shareholder and controlling investor. Shock hit the room like a wave. Some board members sat down abruptly. Others stared openly. Claire's father turned pale. Marcus took his seat calmly and thanked them for their patience. He spoke about transparency, responsibility and respect. He said today was not about revenge but alignment. He explained that Hailcrest Industries would continue operating. That jobs would be protected. That leadership would be evaluated based on merit, not bloodline. Then he paused. He said there would be consequences for public misconduct. He referenced the lobby incident without naming names. He said power revealed character, and today had revealed much. Downstairs security quietly asked reporters to leave. Cameras were turned off. Whispers continued. Claire stood frozen near the reception desk, realizing the ground had shifted beneath her. Her family no longer spoke. No one laughed. Marcus concluded the meeting upstairs by stating he would address the company shortly. He stood and left the room without another word. As he descended back toward the lobby, the building seemed quieter. Smaller. He stepped out of the elevator into a space that now felt entirely different. People avoided his eyes out of shame, not arrogance. Claire's family stood clustered together, uncertain and afraid. Marcus looked at them once. Not with anger, but with understanding. He said they would talk later. He said today was about accountability. Then he walked past them toward the exit, leaving silence behind. The silence Marcus left behind in the lobby did not fade quickly, because humiliation has weight and it settles slowly. Employees who had laughed earlier now avoided each other's eyes, unsure whether they were witnesses or participants. Claire's family remained frozen near the reception desk, caught between disbelief and fear because power had shifted without warning. Claire felt the change first in her chest, where confidence had lived moments earlier. Her breath came shallow as fragments of past conversations replayed in her mind. Every joke she had allowed. Every insult she had excused. Every time she had reduced Marcus to something smaller for her family's comfort. All of it now felt dangerously exposed. Her mother whispered angrily, asking why no one had told them. Her father demanded answers from executives who no longer looked at him for direction. The sister who poured the water began crying quietly, realizing cameras were gone but consequences remained. Upstairs, Marcus walked through executive corridors alone, moving with calm certainty. People stepped aside instinctively now, not out of indifference but respect mixed with fear. Whispers followed him like shadows as employees struggled to reconcile the quiet man with the authority now attached to his name. In his private office, Marcus closed the door gently and stood still for a long moment. He allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had happened. Not triumph. Not vengeance. But confirmation. He sat at the desk and reviewed internal reports that had been hidden from the public narrative. Mismanagement. Nepotism. Lavish spending disguised as tradition. The company had not been unlucky. It had been careless. Marcus began drafting changes. Not impulsive ones. Measured ones. He scheduled internal audits. He reassigned leadership roles. He froze discretionary budgets. He prioritized employee protections because workers had suffered for decisions they never made. While Marcus worked downstairs, Claire was ushered into a private conference room by a senior executive who no longer smiled. She demanded to see her husband immediately. The executive told her Marcus would speak when ready. That sentence struck harder than any insult. Claire sat alone, staring at her reflection in the glass wall. She remembered the early years. The late nights. The quiet ambition Marcus carried without boasting. She remembered how she once admired that. How admiration slowly turned into embarrassment as her family's voices grew louder. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from her mother and father demanding explanations. She did not respond. For the first time she felt truly alone. An hour passed. Then another. Finally the door opened and Marcus entered without ceremony. He did not sit immediately. He stood across from her with his hands relaxed at his sides. Claire tried to speak first. She apologized too quickly. Her words tangled over themselves. She said she never meant for it to go that far. She blamed pressure. Family expectations. Tradition. Marcus listened without interruption. His face unreadable. When she finished he waited several seconds before responding. He said betrayal rarely starts loud. He said it begins quietly with small permissions. He said humiliation was not an accident but a pattern. He said love could not survive where respect had been abandoned. Claire's eyes filled with tears. She asked if he was going to destroy her family. Marcus said no. He said accountability was not destruction. He said consequences were not cruelty. He told her the company would survive. That employees would be protected. That leadership would change. Then he said something that broke her composure completely. He said their marriage would not. Marcus explained that trust once broken publicly could not be rebuilt privately. He said he would not retaliate. He would not shame her. He would simply step away. Claire reached for him but he stepped back calmly. Not angrily. Decisively. He told her legal counsel would handle the rest. He wished her clarity. Then he left the room. News spread through the building quickly. Employees gathered in break rooms whispering about the dramatic shift. Some felt relief. Others fear. Many felt hope. By evening Marcus released a company-wide message. He acknowledged the uncertainty. He reaffirmed values. He promised transparency. The message was calm and human. It did not reference the lobby. It did not assign blame publicly. It set a new tone. That night Marcus returned home alone. The house felt different, quieter. Not empty. Unburdened. He poured a glass of water and stood by the window looking at the city lights. Power had never interested him for dominance. Only for protection. Only for freedom. His phone buzzed again. This time with messages from partners and leaders who had once ignored him. He did not respond immediately. He slept deeply that night without regret. The next morning Hailcrest Industries opened under new leadership. Employees returned to work uncertain but hopeful. Marcus arrived early without escort. He walked the floors speaking quietly with staff. Listening more than directing. In the lobby where humiliation had occurred the marble was spotless. No trace of water. No trace of laughter. But memory lingered. Marcus paused there briefly before continuing. He did not linger. He moved forward. Because power once claimed must be used. Not displayed. Morning light spilled through the glass walls of Hailcrest Industries and revealed a building that no longer belonged to the same people even though the name on the door had not changed. Employees arrived with cautious steps and quiet voices sensing that something irreversible had happened beneath the surface of routine. Marcus Ellison walked through the lobby again not as a spectacle but as a presence that could no longer be ignored. People noticed how he moved slowly without urgency because control no longer required speed. Some nodded respectfully. Some looked away out of guilt. Others watched with curiosity because a new order always creates questions. Marcus stopped to speak with a receptionist who had worked there for 15 years. He asked about her family, her commute, and whether management had ever listened when she raised concerns. She answered honestly, surprised by the attention. Marcus thanked her and made a note because leadership began with listening, not announcements. Upstairs the interim leadership team gathered around a long polished table waiting for direction. Marcus entered quietly and took his seat without claiming the head. That alone unsettled some executives because power that did not seek the center was harder to predict. He spoke about rebuilding trust inside the company before worrying about reputation outside. He spoke about dignity for workers and accountability for executives. He said no one would be punished for silence in the past but no one would be protected for arrogance moving forward. Legal counsel outlined the steps being taken to separate ownership from family entitlement. Contracts were revised. Privileges removed. Oversight installed. Some executives resisted quietly. Marcus noticed. He always did. While this unfolded, Claire faced a reckoning of her own outside the company walls. Friends stopped calling. Family arguments turned bitter. The admiration she once enjoyed now curdled into resentment because proximity to power had been mistaken for ownership. She sat alone in her apartment replaying the moment in the lobby when water hit Marcus's chest. The laughter. The cameras. Her smile. That memory followed her everywhere. Not because it was public. But because it was honest. Her mother called demanding Marcus reverse decisions. Her father raged about betrayal. Claire listened silently for once because she finally understood the cost of choosing comfort over character. Back at Halecrest, Marcus held a town hall meeting without cameras or press. He stood in front of hundreds of employees and acknowledged the pain, uncertainty and fear caused by instability. He did not promise perfection. He promised effort and fairness. Applause rose slowly then strongly because sincerity always reached deeper than spectacle. Employees asked hard questions. Marcus answered calmly even when answers were uncomfortable. Later that day press inquiries flooded in. Marcus declined interviews. He released a single statement focused on stability and respect. He refused to comment on personal matters. That refusal frustrated reporters but protected the people involved. Power exercised quietly often frustrated those who wanted noise. As days passed, changes became visible. Departments reorganized. Executives replaced. Bonuses restructured. Long-ignored teams finally received resources. Productivity improved not because of fear but because of clarity. People knew what mattered now. Marcus met with union representatives and community leaders. He listened again. He adjusted plans. He built consensus instead of compliance. One afternoon Claire requested a meeting. Marcus agreed. They met in a neutral space, not his office. Claire arrived nervous, humbled and visibly changed. She apologized again without justification. She acknowledged the harm without excuses. Marcus listened and thanked her for honesty. He told her forgiveness did not require reconciliation. He wished her healing. They parted without anger. Only understanding. That evening Marcus returned to the lobby once more alone. He stood where humiliation had occurred. Not to relive it. But to release it. He knew the public reckoning was not finished. The family would respond. The press would speculate. The past would resist change. But Marcus also knew this. Truth once revealed did not retreat. And the next chapter would test everyone involved. The city began reacting before the family fully understood what had happened because truth traveled faster than reputation once money and power shifted hands. Executives at rival companies whispered about the lobby incident not with laughter but with caution because humiliation carried consequences now. Investors who once avoided Halecrest Industries quietly reached out asking about stability, governance and the man now clearly in control. Marcus Ellison stayed deliberately calm through it all. He did not attend social events. He did not issue press releases. He focused on systems because systems survived storms better than personalities. Inside Halecrest, employees felt the difference daily. Managers who once ruled through fear softened or disappeared. Meetings ended with decisions instead of blame. Workers who had stayed silent for years began speaking because someone was finally listening. Marcus continued walking the floors every morning. He learned names. He asked about workloads. He remembered answers. That alone rebuilt more trust than any policy document ever could. Claire's family struggled publicly and privately. Her father attempted to rally old allies but found doors closing. Her mother blamed Marcus openly but no one echoed her anger. Her sister avoided cameras and stopped answering calls. The power they believed permanent had always been conditional. They just never bothered to read the terms. Claire herself withdrew from the spotlight entirely. She stopped attending events. She stopped performing confidence. She sat with the weight of her choices alone. She remembered the early days when Marcus had supported her quietly. When he had celebrated her wins without needing credit. When she had chosen convenience over loyalty again and again. That realization hurt more than the loss of status. Because it could not be blamed on anyone else. At Halecrest, the board finalized long-term governance rules separating family legacy from operational control. Nepotism clauses were enforced. Performance metrics replaced surnames. The company began earning respect instead of demanding it. Marcus reviewed every final document himself. Not because he distrusted others. But because accountability began at the top. One afternoon he received a message from an employee who had been mocked years earlier by Claire's family during a holiday party. The employee thanked Marcus for proving that dignity mattered even when no one thought it did. Marcus saved the message quietly. The press eventually moved on because there was no drama to feed on. No shouting. No revenge. Only steady reform. That frustrated people who wanted spectacle. It reassured people who wanted security. Claire requested one final meeting weeks later. Marcus agreed. They spoke calmly. Without accusation. Without hope of reversal. Claire admitted she had mistaken power for belonging. Marcus admitted he had mistaken patience for partnership. They acknowledged their failure without rewriting history. They parted with respect. Not reconciliation. But closure. As months passed, Halecrest Industries stabilized stronger than before. Revenue improved. Turnover dropped. Innovation returned. Other companies studied the transformation quietly. Executives changed how they treated assistants and contractors. Not out of kindness. But awareness. Marcus Ellison rarely thought about the lobby incident anymore. Not because he forgot it. But because it no longer defined him. It had served its purpose. It revealed truth. It ended illusion. And as the city adjusted to the new reality, Marcus prepared for the final phase. One that would not be public. But would determine what lasted. Time did what no argument ever could because distance softened noise and left only what was real. Halecrest Industries continued operating under the new structure and the absence of drama became its greatest strength. Employees settled into routines built on clarity rather than fear, and productivity followed naturally when people felt respected. Marcus Ellison reduced his visibility even further because the work no longer required his constant presence. Systems were in place. Leadership understood expectations. Accountability had become habit. He spent more time mentoring, quietly meeting with managers who showed humility rather than ambition. He taught them that authority borrowed from fear always collapsed while authority earned through consistency endured. The lobby where humiliation once unfolded became just another space again. People passed through it daily without knowing its history. But those who were there that day never forgot. Not because Marcus demanded remembrance. But because shame taught lessons pride never could. Claire rebuilt her life slowly away from cameras and family expectations. She learned what independence truly required when status could no longer open doors. She found work where her name meant nothing and effort meant everything. She thought of Marcus often not with anger but regret. Not because he took power back. But because he had offered it gently for years and she had rejected it publicly. Marcus never spoke ill of her. He never corrected rumors. He never sought sympathy. Those who mattered already understood. One afternoon Marcus returned to the building unannounced and stood again in the lobby alone. He watched employees walk by laughing, complaining, working, living. The building felt lighter now. He remembered standing there soaked in water while laughter echoed. He remembered choosing silence instead of reaction. He remembered deciding that dignity mattered more than winning the moment. That choice had shaped everything that followed. Marcus left the building and walked into the city without escort. No one recognized him. And he smiled. Because power that demanded recognition was fragile. Power that survived invisibility was real. The family business survived. The family pride did not. And Marcus Ellison moved forward carrying the quiet certainty that truth always surfaced. Not through shouting. Not through revenge. But through patience. And timing.